Hello again, feral friends and fellow nature nerds. So, last week, my wife and I had the chance to visit the San Antonio Zoo, which is a small but very nice zoo in San Antonio, Texas. Now, it probably comes as no surprise that I love a good zoo. The chance to see and learn about animals, whether exotic or not, is right in my wheelhouse. But like I said, I like a good zoo, emphasis on good. And the San Antonio Zoo is definitely one of the good ones. So, what makes a good zoo, you ask? Well, a good zoo has enclosures that mimic the animal's native environment and offers enrichment to their animals to keep their minds active as well. And I'm saying this because zoos can be controversial. There are people who feel that keeping animals in captivity for the purpose of displaying them for public enjoyment is cruel. And if I'm honest, I can at least understand that argument. But to me, zoos are about more than just entertainment. Most zoos are in the business of both education and conservation, and that's where the true value of zoos lies. Both in the conservation of wild populations of the animals they have in captivity, whether that's through captive breeding, research, or outreach programs, and by educating the public about these animals and their native habitats. It's hard for people to care about conserving an animal they've never seen and know nothing about. Seeing an animal in a zoo can spark a sense of wonder, bring awareness to that animal, to the challenges it might be facing in the wild, and helps the general public care about conservation. But I didn't come here to talk about zoos. I came here to talk about some of the animals I saw at the zoo. And full disclosure, that trip is probably going to inspire the next several episodes. So let's get started. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, and this is the Dispatches from the Forest podcast. For today's episode, inspired by my zoo visit, I want to tell you about the American flamingo. Now, you might be thinking, dude goes to a zoo, sees a bunch of exotic animals, and the first thing he wants to talk about is flamingos? Really? But here's the thing. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I have a soft spot for those animals that are kind of overlooked. And I feel like flamingos fall into that category. I mean, everybody probably knows what a flamingo looks like. A long-legged, long-necked, bright pink bird with a bent bill. And you probably already know that that bright pink color is a result of their diet. But what else do you really know about flamingos? Their biology, their life history, and here in the United States, their history. I'm guessing probably not much. But you're about to learn. So outside of a zoo, where can you find flamingos in the wild? Well, nearly the entire population of American flamingos, between 180 and 200,000 birds, occurs in the Caribbean. They breed on the northern coast of South America, the multitude of islands that constitute the Bahamas and West Indies, the northern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, and formerly, and maybe currently, South Florida and the Florida Keys. But we're going to circle back to Florida in a second. For the record, there are flamingos in other parts of the world too. The greater flamingo, found in coastal sub-Saharan Africa, India, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean, is the largest and most widespread of the flamingo family. And while American flamingos are primarily a tropical species, there are sometimes storms that blow them into unexpected places. In 2023, after Hurricane Idalia, flamingos turned up in 17 U.S. states, including Kansas, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Most of these lost souls didn't stick around long before they returned to where they came from, but occasionally when this happens, one will decide to hang around a while, in some cases years, all by itself. Maybe it just doesn't want to go back to Florida. But we're going to go back to Florida. South Florida and the Florida Keys was the northernmost stronghold of the American flamingo's distribution until their population collapsed somewhere around 1900. Prior to that, in the 1800s, Large flocks consisting of up to 1,000 birds and possibly up to 2,500 were not uncommon, at least in that small part of southern and western Florida where flamingos go. But they were, as so many other things before them, hunted heavily. The last report of a large flock, 500 to 1,000 birds, was in 1902. After that, flamingo sightings in Florida didn't exceed single digits for decades, bottoming out in 1940 when not a single flamingo sighting was reported in the state. Now, you might wonder how that's possible, given that the American flamingo is an iconic symbol of Florida, and it features prominently on a lot of Florida-themed merchandise. Well, this association primarily originates from the Flamingo Hotel, a popular Miami Beach hotel in the 1920s. The hotel's strong association with South Florida led to the popularity of flamingo-themed souvenirs. And this association was further boosted by captive flamingos in Hialeah Park, a horse racing track outside of Miami. In fact, when flamingo sightings in Florida started to rise in the 1950s, it was assumed that the majority of these sightings were birds that had escaped from Hialeah Park, which was not an uncommon occurrence. For many years, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission had flamingos listed as a non-native species. But a study in 2018 confirmed that flamingos were indeed native to Florida, and concluded that the growing number of flamingo sightings were more than likely wild individuals, not Hialeah Park fugitives, and that at least some of these birds were now, once again, year-round Florida residents. Now, as you might have figured out, flamingos are social birds, gathering and nesting in large, dense, noisy flocks in saline lagoons, mudflats, and shallow, brackish coastal or inland lakes. One flock in Cuba was estimated to contain 80,000 birds, 40 to 45% of the total population. Did I mention that they're noisy? Here's what they sound like. And for the record, a flock of flamingos is known, for pretty obvious reasons, as a flamboyance. They feed mainly on crustaceans, mollusks, insect larvae, and other aquatic invertebrates, but they'll also eat some seeds, plant material, and algae. And they're not afraid to travel for a good meal. In some years, birds breeding on the island of Bonaire off Venezuela are known to fly 54 miles, 90 kilometers, to feed on the coast of the mainland. Flamingos forage by striding through shallow water with their head submerged. As their head moves through the water, they use their large tongues to push water through comb-like structures called lamellae in their bills, filtering out small food items, similar to how whales strain krill through their baleen. Now, with their pink color and curved necks that look kind of like half a heart, flamingos are often associated with love and romance. But, trigger warning here, if you're the ultra-conservative type, their love lives will probably make you cringe. While males usually initiate courtship, females control the process. If interest is mutual, a female will walk by the male and the male will walk with her. The pair will make synchronized movements until one of them aborts this process. For low-intensity courtships, males and females walk in unison with their heads raised. In high-intensity courtships, the pair walks a bit faster with their heads dropped in a false feeding posture. This high-intensity courtship stops at any point if either bird turns and the other doesn't follow, the heads are raised, they stop moving in unison, or the pace slows down. If the female is ultimately receptive to breeding, she stops walking and presents for the male. Long-term pairs don't frequently engage in this type of courtship behavior or in in-group displays, but they will stand, sleep, and eat close to each other. These courtship behaviors are most often seen with individuals that are young and single and ready to mingle, ones that change partners often, or are, simply put, promiscuous, which seems to be the case for some flamingos. And flamingos display a wide range of pairing relationships. Some birds have a long-term partner throughout the year. Others only pair up during courtship and nest attendance. But American flamingos are generally monogamous-ish, at least when selecting a nest site and incubating and raising young. And I say ish because extra pair copulations, essentially polyamorous groupings, are relatively common, resulting in thruples or even quartets of mated flamingos. For thruples consisting of one male and two females, the subordinate female is tolerated by the male but often fights with the dominant female. If the two females share a nest and both lay an egg, one female will try to destroy the other one's egg or roll it out of the nest. For thruples made up of two males and one female, the subordinate male is tolerated by the other two and often becomes the primary incubator and caregiver of the chicks. And in a quartet, the dominant male and the two females will take care of the nest, while the subordinate male hangs around the periphery, never really getting access to the nest, and probably looking generally sad and thinking about his poor life choices. But that last part is just speculation on my part. In most flamingo pairs, though, both individuals usually construct and defend the nest site. Nests are a volcano-shaped mud cone with a shallow cup on top, except in the Galapagos where the nest consists of a pile of rocks and debris. Females usually lay a single egg, which is incubated by both parents for about a month before hatching. Chicks are fed flamingo milk or crop milk, something I talked about when I talked about pigeons. It's a substance produced in the crop of both parents, but it's less like milk and more like cottage cheese. A week or two after hatching, chicks leave the nest and join large creches, kind of like flamingo daycare. Several adults watch over the chicks in the creche, but each chick is still fed by its own parents. Now, aside from the bright pink color, one of the other distinctive attributes of flamingos are their unipetal stance, a fancy way of saying that they stand on one leg a lot. While the purpose of this iconic posture remains ultimately unknown, there's strong evidence to suggest that it's a way of regulating body temperature. Like most birds, the largest amount of heat is lost through the legs and feet, so having long legs is a disadvantage when the temperature drops and retaining heat becomes really important. By holding one leg up against the body, the flamingo reduces the surface area by which heat loss can occur, which keeps the bird warmer. And it's been observed that when the temperature is higher, like say midday, flamingos will stand on both legs, which would increase the surface area, allow for more heat loss, and keep the bird cooler. Now, being tropical, American flamingos don't need to migrate, generally, for weather reasons, but they will migrate short distances to get food or if their current habitat is disturbed in some way. One thing that causes flamingos to leave their feeding grounds is if the water rises too high. High water would obviously make it difficult for them to wade, and if they can't wade, they can't eat, so they need to find another place to feed. While they usually don't have to go as far as many other birds, flamingos will still fly in V's like other migratory birds, and they may have to go for some time without eating. They fly with their necks straight out in front and those long legs trailing out behind. Okay, final fun fact time. Average lifespan for a wild flamingo is 30 to 40 years. The oldest known wild flamingo was at least 49, banded in the Bahamas in 1970 and recovered in 2019. And in captivity, they can reach 50 to 60 years old. And that, my feral friends, is where we're going to end this episode. If you want to support the podcast, that would be fantastic. Here's some ways to do that. Become a patron. Subscriptions start at just $5 a month, and with 3 paid months, you get some sweet Dispatches from the Forest merch. Go to patreon.com/dispatchesfromtheforest to find out all the details. You can make a single donation through PayPal using my email address, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com, which also, of course, is where you can email me if you have a question, comment, or a request for a future episode. I've also gotten a couple questions about just sending me a check, and that's great too. If you want to shoot me an email, I'll let you know where to send it. You can donate using the Cash App and the hashtag ForestNerd. You can find the merch store at cafepress.com/shop/dispatches from the forest. Then just click on products, find something you like. Finally, you can follow Dispatches from the Forest on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. The Dispatches from the Forest podcast is a production of Dispatches from the Forest and may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission.